Andy, something in your life has turned upside down.
Oh, yeah. I know where you're going with this.
You do?
Absolutely.
Hey, man, your shirt looks really good, though.
Thank you. I ironed it in a hotel room, which
That's-
is where I'm living now, with all 4 of my children and my wife.
Now, we haven't even talked about this. I know you're in the hotel, but like, is it seriously just a one room?
No, it's 2 adjoining, so we have a
Okay,
little door
okay.
in between, which I learned last night doesn't mute the sounds of my teenage children at all. So
Nothing really mutes
that's
the
right.
sounds of
So
teenage
yeah,
children.
water damage, water pipe burst in my house, and so we're having the floors ripped up and the cabinets replaced, and so much adult stuff, you know.
Gosh.
And so for
It's
probably,
fun, but not fun.
Yeah, I mean, my wife is super pumped, right?
Yeah.
New cabinets,
Yeah.
new floors, and I'm like, yeah, but we're paying for 3 weeks in it, not paying physically, like
Yeah,
dollars,
no,
but we're
you were paying for it.
emotionally
Yeah.
for 3 weeks in a hotel to make that happen.
So what you're saying is there's a lot of chaos
There's
in
a
your
lot
life.
of chaos, Jay. Good
I wonder why I
segue.
said chaos.
Good segue.
There's also a lot of chaos in the election season.
Is there? Is there an election? Is that local?
Oh my gosh,
City
I feel like the
council?
election has been going on
For years.
forever.
In 2020, the decade that never ends, right? Yeah.
So our time together here is really, how does a youth pastor, how does a youth worker really navigate the chaos
Yeah.
of the election season? And we could go a gazillion different ways, right?
And do you think that, like, I was trying to think about this. I don't remember, maybe the last election, but I mean, we're old. I'm thinking, and we've been in youth history forever. I don't remember thinking about maybe that, I need to talk to my students about this election 3 or 4 elections ago. I mean, the last few have been something that we really need to address because of kind of the climate of the cultural rhetoric around it. You know?
I feel like 4 years ago, I saw something come up on one of my social feeds, and I was like, it was a little polarizing then, but
Yeah.
I feel like either maybe I'm more in tune to it, but I feel like this year is just
Yeah.
like, or this cycle is disastrously chaotic.
Yeah, and I mean maybe the first Obama, maybe the first was kind of because it's kind of historic, you know, African American, but this just seems big. Like it seems like it's pervasive, and we know students are paying attention to it. They can't help but, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, how do we as youth workers, as youth leaders, speak into their lives
That's
and
right.
help them navigate all the gosh, I mean, vitriol is a word that comes to mind. It's a big word, but like that's what it is. Like all the just the angst and kind of the over.
I mean, one, how do I do it?
Yeah.
And two, how do I help my students even uncover it? You know,
But you
to
know,
live
this is
through
so
it.
funny because we didn't even talk about this, but like those can maybe also be 2 different things. I
Us
mean,
and
really.
them?
Yeah,
Students,
like
yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
trying to do. I mean, I may have my own feelings, opinions, and maybe even in certain moments I don't handle that well, right?
Yes.
But like for students, we're trying to model for them
Yeah.
an appropriate way of dealing with something
Processing
like this.
and
Yeah.
then living it out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I think the 3 points that you put together here, I really do think really drive that home. And so I'm excited. I'm really excited for the last one. So make sure you stick around for that.
I like that. That was good.
That-
You're
I
such a
really
marketer.
didn't. I
You're
didn't.
such a marketer.
I didn't even mean for it to be a cliffhanger. I really like it, and so I feel like it really speaks into to what believers should do. But this first one, the duty of all Christians to desire a culture that reflects kingdom culture.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think duty, I wondered, is that too strong of a word? But I think it's maybe desire, duty, calling. We should want to see a world that reflects God's kingdom values, right?
That's right.
And the primary means, if we're not careful, of which we think about that, is voting and laws and gosh, it's so important. I mean, we all want that. We want a world that reflects our kingdom values as Christ followers. But I think it's something that I've noticed over the years, or that I've seen pundits have noticed, is that a lot of Christians we default to legislating that Christian morality, right? Like we put too much emphasis on the government as a structure by which we achieve God's kingdom.
Yeah, or we
in our
feel like we
culture.
are a good Christian and a good Christian society if our leaders are this. The first thing that came to mind, even as you're talking, is I just wonder Paul. You know, as he's sitting there and he goes, you know what? If we could just get a Christian Caesar.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, if we could just get a follower of Christ to be Caesar, all of our problems would go away, you know?
But then there's tension there because
There is.
if he could have,
Yes.
it would have been great.
Yeah,
If we could have the most, God-fearing, however we want to define it, Christ follower in the office, right? Yeah, things would be different. But I think the point is to help teach students perspective and kind of lay the foundation. The primary means by which cultures changed for God's glory is through the individual lives of Christians, being salt and light, interacting
And coming
with each
together in
other.
community. That's
yeah,
right.
I mean,
That's
think
right.
about, and we could insert, any different political sugar stick right here,
Yes.
right? Think about your issue, right? And how you want somebody's mind to be changed on that issue. How is their mind likely to be more changed? By a law that makes them act a certain way, or by a Christian influencing them and leading to them to understand that, no, the lens by which I see this has to be God and his values.
Yeah.
But there's tension.
I was going to say, I even sense the
yeah.
tension. Like even as you're saying that, I've just, in my mind, I thought of 3 or 4 topics, everything from immigration to education
that's
to
right.
the hot topic of Supreme Court is, I think it's cheap to say, man, if we just get the right Supreme Court justice, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, that's
versus all of a sudden, what about my responsibility to lead my life and to lead my students, to lead my family in such a way that brings God glory?
So I like what you're saying there because it's a both and that's why it's important that we engage with the political process, right? But I think the point that you and I are trying to make, and hopefully we're making, is that we can't put all of our eggs in that basket, right? It's kind of
funny.
both
I was going
and.
to say chips on the table. You went for the
Eggs in the basket. I'm a hillbilly. They make the rural agrarian.
I'm going to get kicked out of seminary for gambling,
For your
apparently.
chips on the table. I was thinking potato chips. I'm hungry.
I have a fun little story there. Maybe I'll tell it sometime about
Good. Chips on the table.
me calling the seminary. And anyway, okay, so here we go. Number 2. It's actually a pretty good story.
Let's not get political.
All right. That was good. Politics is no excuse to be a jackwad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a little different way.
I mean, you didn't write that, but I was just thinking,
I mean, isn't that what we've seen in
Oh
this
my gosh.
season the last few years is, I use this word non-theologically, but like good Christian men and women who have just dispensed with the niceties and the Christian character in the realm of politics. It's like, well, hold on though, this is politics. so it's okay for me
I'm
to be
allowed
this
to
way,
live
right?
this way here, and then,
I just was thinking as I was talking about that this morning, like how we disagree with each other, right? Like how we take a stand, and some of that's with brothers and sisters in Christ, right? But I mean, across the aisle. Just because we disagree with somebody, it doesn't mean that we can cease to live out the fruits of the Spirit, right? Or to love others as Christ loved us. I mean,
to be
all
imitators.
of those, all those wonderful calls to Christian character. We have to show our students that we can't leave that behind. And let's be honest, we've not done a great job of modeling this for them.
Correct.
So we need to kind of reclaim that high ground.
Correct.
And
it's the way that we live that out. I mean, if you think your students don't notice the way that you are online or in conversations with people, you are mistaken. And unfortunately, I can think of some examples in my life to where
the same thing.
A student was, has come up to me and been like, "Hey, you said X, Y, Z," and I'm like,
"Oh dang, I didn't know you were following Instagram.
Yeah,
When did I give you
and
access
so
to my
it just
page?"
made me think through this, especially in this Be Imitators, is politics, just because there's disagreements on politics, doesn't mean that it needs to be so polarizing that I'm willing to throw out my witness, my Christian mindset, just because it's politics.
And let's be honest, we might be helping a student reframe the way they see something that's been taught to them inaccurately by a grandparent or a neighbor.
Somebody super close.
Right? That's right. And so we've got to help just show students it's okay to be passionate about. These things are important, right? The topics that we're dealing with in the election are important. Be passionate about them. But don't stop loving your neighbor as yourself, right?
That's right. Which leads to this third one.
A good segue
I mean,
into
it
the
is
last
really
one.
good. I love it. The other is not your enemy.
Yeah.
And you had a great parallel into this, and I really want to talk more before we turn the camera on because I think that's so deep.
Yeah.
Share that with
I
everyone.
mean, just to me, I was thinking about, again, kind of building off this, how we disagree, but just the idea that the other person on the other end of this political spectrum or the aisle, and that doesn't matter, far extremes, right? They're not your enemy. Well, we can say, Antifa or whatever, right? Think as big as extreme as you can. Oh, well, that person's my enemy. I mean, if we're Christ followers, that person can't be our enemy, right? I mean, we have to love them in truth. And the first thing that jumped to my mind was Peter's interaction with Jesus, and he's talking about, forgiving his neighbor. Well, how many times do I have to forgive this guy, right? And Jesus is like, I'm going to tell you
Just give me the number.
Right? Just give me the number, which we can all see ourselves there.
Yeah. Oh,
Jesus is like, I'm going to tell you a story. And he tells the story of the Good Samaritan. If you remember the Good Samaritan, the reason it would have been so radical to Peter is because Peter had been culturally trained or raised up to think that Samaritans were the lowest, the worst, right? The farthest end of the spectrum from him, right? And so plug in the parallel of the good socialist or the good whatever, right? Whatever you want to put on that spectrum, right? For some of you, maybe the good evangelical, right? Like whatever.
True.
Right? I mean, Jesus was telling Peter, that guy that you think is other, that is other, that is so different from you. In this story, he's the righteous one.
Yeah.
And it blew Peter's mind, right?
Yeah.
And I think for us, it's just super important to lead students to understand that there are people that we may see as other in this political discussion.
Correct.
They're not our enemy. They're not our enemy. We cannot walk, you said, give up your witness or walk away from your testimony. Like, we can't do that in this discussion. So,
yeah, I like this because it really calls to the action of love, right? Be imitators. They will know you by the way that you love one another. And I know that they're talking about in the church here, and the Samaritan could be the outside of the church. So the other is both and.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think more so in me, in a political season, I see somebody else that is supposed to be in.
That's right.
Right? We're brothers or sisters, and then they hold this radical view.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, what are you thinking? You can't. No, these two don't go together. And I forget that the other, my brother, my sister, even somebody that isn't in the church, is not my enemy.
That's right.
The enemy is Satan, and he loves this chaos in this election season. But I think that if we were to live these three things out in front of our students and communicate, the duty of Christians is to desire culture that reflects the kingdom of God. Politics is no excuse to be a jerk.
Yeah.
I think you're saying a call dispense with Christian character. You said it really nice.
Yeah.
But then number three is that the other is not the enemy. And so
now we're just going to do these things, right?
No, let's just talk about them.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope this gave you
that's awkward there, because all of a sudden when you said, now we got to go do it, I'm like, that's actually the hard part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest. It's a call for us to think about our own actions in this election cycle, but also how important it is. If we're struggling with it, then we know our students are looking around going, what's the right way to do? So hopefully this is a good framework for you guys as you think about this.
Yeah. Thanks for what you do in the trenches of youth ministry, day in and day out. We can't imagine what it is like on the front lines there. Well, we can't imagine. That's why we're here. And we imagine that it is so difficult that we create high-quality resources and life-changing events so you can spend time doing what matters most, which is leading your students into a vibrant relationship with Jesus Christ. If there's anything that we can do, feel free to reach out. We are here to serve you.
Absolutely.
And with that, we'll see you later.
See ya.